Chapter 7. Following Hannah's lessons of compassion, tonight we meet Reverend Marcus Johnson during the height of the civil rights movement. Through freedom songs and unwavering faith, Emma and Cory will learn how music and determination can change the world. A moment later, the shimmering mist of the magical Christmas Express dissolved once again, revealing a humble farmhouse kitchen that materialized around Cory and Emma. The air hung thick and heavy, laden with dust particles that danced in the weak sunlight filtering through grimy windows. Each breath felt like inhaling sandpaper, scratching at their throats and lungs. Through the smudged glass panes, a desolate landscape stretched to the horizon. Once fertile fields, now cracked and barren, the earth's skin split open under the merciless gaze of a bloated, angry sun. "What happened here?" Emma whispered, her words muffled as she instinctively pressed her hand against her mouth and nose, fingers curling into a makeshift mask. Before Cory could formulate a response, a voice cut through the stillness like a dull knife through stale bread. "Welcome to what's left of the Hawkins farm." The siblings turned, their shoes scuffing against the gritty floorboards, to see a man seated at a worn wooden table. Time and hardship had carved deep furrows into his face, each line a story of struggle etched into his weathered skin. His hands resting on the table's scarred surface were a map of calluses and cracks, testament to years of back-breaking labor. "I'm John, though I reckon there ain't much of a farm left to welcome you to." Cory and Emma's eyes met, a silent conversation passing between them as realization dawned. They had stepped into another chapter of American history, as tangible and real as the dust coating their skin. Pixie, ever present at their feet, wagged her tail encouragingly, stirring up small eddies of dust that swirled around her paws. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Hawkins," Cory said, stepping forward. The floorboard beneath his foot creaked in protest, the sound echoing in the oppressive silence. "I'm Cory, and this is my sister Emma. We're travelers, you could say." John's eyes, the color of faded denim and dulled by years of hardship, flickered with a hint of curiosity, a tiny spark in a sea of wariness. "Travelers, are you?" His voice rasped like dry leaves skittering across parched earth. "Well, you picked a mighty strange time to visit these parts. Ain't much to see, except dust and despair." Emma felt her heart constrict, John's sorrow as palpable as the grit in the air. She swallowed hard, tasting dust before asking gently, "Could you tell us what happened here, Mr. Hawkins?" John let out a heavy sigh that seemed to come from the very depth of his soul. He gestured toward the table with a hand that trembled slightly. Whether from age or emotion, it was hard to tell. As Cory and Emma settled into chairs that creaked ominously under their weight, John began to weave his tale, his words painting pictures in the dust-filled air. "Used to be this land was a slice of heaven," he began, his eyes taking on a faraway look. "Rich soil, black as night, and twice as fertile. Harvests so bountiful we thought the good times would never end. Why, we thought we were living the American dream." A wistful smile flickered across his face like a candle flame in a draught, quickly extinguished by the grimace that followed. Then came 29. Stock market crash, they called it. Didn't mean much to us farmers at first, but soon enough. His voice trailed off, and as if responding to some unspoken cue, the kitchen around them began to blur and shift. Cory and Emma watched wide-eyed as the scene transformed, the drab, dust-coated present dissolving into vibrant memories of the past. Suddenly they were standing in the midst of fields bursting with life. Golden wheat swayed in a gentle breeze, each stalk heavy with promise. The farmhouse, modest but well maintained, stood proud against a sky of impossible blue. A younger John, his face unlined and eyes bright with hope, worked the land with a spring in his step that spoke of confidence in the future. That was the 20s, John's voice narrated, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Me and Sally, that's my wife, we thought we had it all. Good land, healthy kids, bright future stretching out before us like an endless highway. The idyllic scene wavered like a mirage, colors blending and fading as a new, harsher reality took its place. The siblings watched, hearts heavy, as drought and desolation crept across the land like a slow-moving plague. Once lush crops withered in parched fields, their stalks brown and brittle as old bones. Monstrous clouds of dust, looking almost alive in their malevolence, blotted out the sun. Gaunt livestock huddled in barren pastures, ribs prominent under dull hides, eyes glazed with hunger. Then came the dirty 30s, John continued, his voice as dry and cracked as the earth he described. Dust storms so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. The air itself turned against us, every breath a struggle. Crops failed year after year, the earth giving up its bounty to the relentless wind. And still we hoped and prayed for rain, our eyes scanning every cloud for the promise of salvation. Emma felt hot tears welling up, blurring her vision as she watched the hardships unfold like a tragic play. She saw a family, John's family, locked in a desperate struggle for survival. Children with hollow cheeks and tired eyes that had seen too much too soon. A woman, her movements weary but determined, trying to conjure a meal from almost nothing. Love and desperation warring in her gaze. And John, growing more haggard with each passing season, the weight of responsibility bowing his shoulders, but never quite breaking his spirit. Christmas of 35 was the last straw, John said, his voice breaking like a drought-stricken branch underfoot. The scene shifted again, showing a sparse table with more empty space than food. A tiny Charlie Brown-esque tree bearing a single homemade ornament. No money for presents, barely any food on the table. I saw the look in my children's eyes. Hunger, yes, but worse than that, hopelessness. I felt I'd failed them as a father, as a provider. It was like a knife twisting in my gut, sharper than any hunger pang. The kitchen solidified around them once more, the oppressive dust and silence settling back into place like unwelcome guests. John slumped in his chair, a man defeated by forces beyond his control, shoulders bowed under the weight of shattered dreams. I died in the winter of 36, he said softly, his form flickering slightly like a candle guttering in its final moments. Pneumonia, they said, but I reckon it was a broken heart that did me in. Couldn't bear to see my family suffer anymore. Cory and Emma sat in stunned silence, the weight of John's story settling over them like a heavy quilt made of sorrow and lost hopes. They had learned about the Great Depression in school, seen pictures in textbooks, but experiencing it through John's eyes made it painfully, viscerally real. The taste of dust lingered on their tongues, a tangible reminder of the hardships they had witnessed. After a moment that stretched like the endless barren fields outside, Emma spoke up, her voice gentle but firm, a seedling of hope pushing through cracked earth. Mr. Hawkins, I'm so sorry for all you've been through. But I don't think you failed your family. John looked up, surprise and a flicker of something that might have been hope lighting his tired eyes. What do you mean, child? As Emma began to explain, her words weaving a tapestry of resilience and enduring love, the scene around them started to shift once more. The dust-filled air shimmered like a heat mirage, reality bending as the magic of the Christmas Express prepared to take them on another journey. The siblings were about to embark on a quest to help John see his life and his legacy in a whole new light, as vibrant and full of promise as his fields had been. Emma leaned forward, her eyes shimmering with a depth of compassion beyond her years. The flickering light of understanding danced across her face as she spoke, her voice soft yet resolute. Mr. Hawkins, you've shown incredible strength and love for your family. That's not failure. That's true wealth. As her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, the dreary kitchen began to transform. It was as if an invisible artist was painting over the grim reality with strokes of hope and memory. The oppressive dust in the air seemed to retreat, particles swirling and dissolving, leaving another image, streams of golden sunlight, as warm and comforting as a mother's embrace, broke through the now sparkling windows, casting a honeyed glow over the room. The bare, scarred table at the center of the kitchen slowly came to life. A modest but hearty Christmas meal materialized, each dish appearing like a mirage, solidifying into reality. A golden brown chicken, its skin crackled and glistening, took center stage. Around it, a constellation of roasted vegetables formed, carrots like burnished copper, potatoes dusted with herbs, their earthy aroma filling the air. A small, humble cake appeared last, its frosting simple, but applied with obvious love and care. John's eyes widened, the wrinkles around them deepening in disbelief. His gaze darted from the laden table to the children and back, his mouth working soundlessly for a moment before he found his voice. I don't understand, he stammered, his words thick with confusion and a flicker of hope he seemed afraid to acknowledge. This isn't real. We never had a Christmas like this during the worst years. Cory chimed in, his voice gentle but encouraging, like a hand reaching out to guide someone through darkness. Maybe not exactly like this, Mr. Hawkins, but can you tell us about your happiest memories on the farm? The times when you felt richest, even if it wasn't about money? John's brow furrowed in concentration, deep lines etching themselves across his forehead like furrows in a well-tended field. As he began to speak, his voice hesitant at first, but growing stronger with each word, the air around the table shimmered and shifted. Ghostly figures materialized, each one glowing with an inner light that seemed to radiate love and memory. A woman with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled appeared first, her form wavering like a reflection in a sun-dappled pond. 3 children of varying ages followed, their spectral outlines filled with the vibrant energy of youth. "Sally," John whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. He reached out instinctively, his calloused fingers trembling as they passed through the woman's shimmering form. "And the kids. Michael, Emily, little Thomas." The words tumbled from his lips like precious stones, each name weighted with love and longing. As John shared his memories, the scene around them became more vivid, as if his words were breathing life into the very air. The kitchen faded away, replaced by a series of vivid tableaus. John spoke of late summer evenings when the work was done and the family would sit on the porch watching fireflies dance in the twilight. The siblings could almost feel the worn wood of the porch steps beneath them, smell the sweet night air, see the tiny lanterns of the fireflies winking in and out of existence. He remembered harvest celebrations with neighbors, everyone coming together to share what little they had. The room filled with the phantom sounds of laughter and music, the ghostly aroma of shared dishes prepared with more love than ingredients. And he recalled quiet moments by the fire, reading stories to his children from well-worn books. The crackling of the flames, the soft rustle of pages turning, and the wide-eyed wonder on his children's faces as they listened. All these details painted themselves in the air around them, as tangible as if they were happening in that very moment. "Even in the worst of times," John said softly, his voice thick with a mixture of sorrow and newfound appreciation, "we had each other. Sally's strength like a mountain standing firm against the wind. Michael's determination, a fire that refused to be extinguished. Emily's kindness, a well of sweetness in a bitter world. And little Thomas' laughter. Oh, his laughter was like rain in the desert, bringing life to our parched souls." Emma nodded encouragingly, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "That's what I mean, Mr. Hawkins. You gave your family something more valuable than money or material things. You gave them love, a compass to navigate the storms of life. You gave them values, roots that run deeper than any drought could reach. And you gave them the strength to persevere, to bend like wheat in the wind without breaking." Cory added, his voice steady and warm, "And those things last, Mr. Hawkins. They shape who your children become, like water shaping stone over time." As if in response to Cory's words, the scene shifted again, the air rippling like heat waves over summer-baked earth. This time, they saw visions of the future, each one unfolding like a flower opening to the sun. John's children appeared as adults, their faces etched with the character born of hardship overcome. Michael stood tall in a crisp engineer's uniform, his hands confidently guiding the construction of massive infrastructure projects. His eyes, so like his father's, gleamed with the satisfaction of building a better world. Emily's gentle smile radiated compassion as she comforted families in her role as a social worker. In her every gesture, in the set of her shoulders as she faced each day's challenges, John could see echoes of Sally's strength and his own resilience. And Thomas, his baby, stood in a field of green so vibrant it almost hurt to look at. He moved with purpose, using modern farming techniques to coax life from the once barren soil. In the furrow of his brow as he worked, John recognized his own determination, reborn and renewed. John watched in awe, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks, carving glistening path through the dust of years. His voice, when he spoke, was choked with emotion. They made it? They had good lives? Emma smiled warmly, her whole being seeming to radiate compassion and understanding. Because of the foundation you laid, Mr. Hawkins, your love, your work ethic, your resilience, it all lived on in them. You gave them roots and wings. The visions faded like mist before the morning sun, leaving them back in the kitchen. But it no longer felt desolate. Instead, it was filled with a warm, comforting glow, as if the memories and love shared had seeped into the walls. John looked at Cory and Emma, his eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and newfound peace. The lines on his face, once etched by worry and hardship, now seemed to speak of wisdom and love. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice rich with emotion. "I reckon I was richer than I knew." As John's form began to fade, becoming translucent like the others before him, he left the siblings with one last piece of wisdom. His voice echoed in the air, carrying the weight of hard-won truth. "Remember, kids, true wealth ain't in your pockets. It's in your hearts and in the love you share." With those words, John disappeared like a candle flame, gently extinguished, leaving Cory and Emma alone in the gently swaying train car. The transition was so smooth, so dreamlike, that for a moment they sat in stunned silence, the echo of John's last words still reverberating in their minds. Finally, Cory spoke up, his voice quiet and thoughtful, as if afraid to break the spell of the moment. "You know, Em, I never really thought about how lucky we are. I mean, we've never had to worry about food on the table or a roof over our heads." Emma nodded, reaching out to wipe a tear from her cheek. The droplet glistened on her fingertip, a tiny crystal containing all the emotions of their profound experience. "And we've always had Mum and Dad's love and support," she added, her voice trembling slightly. "And when Dad left, Matthew appeared in our lives. Even when things get tough, we know we have each other." Pixie nuzzled their hands, her fur soft as silk against their skin. Her thoughts were a warm touch against their minds again, soft, sweet, and magical. Family, love, resilience. These are the true gifts of Christmas, she said softly, her dark eyes wise and understanding. As the Christmas Express continued its magical journey, wheels clicking a gentle rhythm on tracks that spanned time and space. Cory and Emma sat closer together. A new appreciation for their family and their blessings bloomed in their hearts. They had witnessed the strength of the human spirit in the face of tremendous adversity, and it had changed them, reshaping their understanding of true wealth and happiness. The lights in the carriage dimmed once more, the soft glow fading like the last embers of a hearth fire. It signaled the approach of their next ghostly passenger, the promise of another journey into the past, or perhaps the future. But this time, instead of apprehension, the siblings felt a sense of eager anticipation, a hunger for understanding burning bright within them. They were ready to learn, to understand, and to grow from whatever experience awaited them next. As the train whistles sounded in the distance, Cory and Emma understood. This extraordinary Christmas journey was shaping not just their night, but their lives. The melody of hope rings on as our magical journey continues. Tomorrow, we'll leap into the future where urgent environmental warnings await. Check out all of the other books in the Magical Papillon series of cozy mysteries on Amazon now.